slide, you weren't like an accountant or a lawyer. You were more of an entrepreneur, yeah? So what was your best thing going? Run me through your...
Okay. Give me 3 minutes and I'll go there, okay? Because that's right where I'm going exactly. See, what I want to show you here today, some of you are sitting there saying, you know, Brother Richie's going to put me in some kind of a niche somewhere, and I'm going to be in a corner office as an accountant the rest of my life, if this is true. You know, can I never do anything else but just find this one area I'm strong and get in and stay in it? That's not what that says to me. That says to me that yesterday, you know, I'll just use it. You know, yesterday I read a new book. I moved the cheese. Never read the book. How to Move the Cheese. What's the name of the book? Who Moved My Cheese. Never read it. I saw it, seen it, looked at it, had it on the shelf. Never read it till this weekend. Finally read it. You know, that impacted my life a little bit. Every book I pick up, I don't have time to read all the books in the world, and so I choose carefully the books, and that's one that was so little and seemed like so childish, I just never read it. And then I realized when I did read it, it wasn't written for kids, it's written for Richie and people a lot smarter than me. And that's the kind of things that every time I find a good book or hear a great devotional or meet a Bill Child next week, it changes my life. It changes my outlook. I look at things differently. When I realize what Bill Child did to build a $500 million company from an education, school teaching mentality. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. They're the ones that change the world, by the way, the educators. But that's where he wanted to go do, is go teach. Ended up come next week and teach us about how you build a business that Warren Buffett would buy. Second richest man in America, at least. And the point is that this interest will change. The more you grow up, the more you read, the more you mingle with the Bill Childeses and the Mitch Davises of life, the more you go to new classes and take a humanities class and an art class and something else in life and mix and come to the lecture series and hear about 170 restaurants along the way, as you hear those kind of stories, your interest will begin to change, and you'll say, man, I want to go practice working in a Mexican restaurant for a week and see if I can figure out how to build a 170 restaurant chain. And so you might become passionate about that, go spend the time with the Mexican restaurants of life, and discover you're pretty good at it. And then you say, I think I got an idea that I could go from Taco Bell to Taco Maker to Taco It and create a new chain of tacos and become the best in the world at it. He had more chains than anybody else, just working at the PCC right now as a missionary, isn't he? Got more Taco Maker restaurants than anybody in the world. Wasn't the Taco Bell, wasn't the Taco Time, it was the Taco Maker. Little niche, little idea. 170 restaurant chain. Didn't start out that way. Worked for a minute in a Mexican restaurant, didn't he? That's my point. This interest could change. You can become the best at this in 25 to 35 to 55 to 155 different areas, depending on how passionate and proactive you are in life. This is where the Covey stuff mixes in there, right? The proactive is the #1 habit of all highly effective people, the granddaddy habit of everybody that makes it. In a proactive mode, for a proactive person, this profession might change 20 times. Did for me. I don't think I was the best in the world at any things I'm going to share with you in a minute, but I was dang close in some of them. Just because I discovered that I had a little niche of a talent, if I could find a way to put it to work, I found I was pretty good at it. Then I could modify it and adapt it and become pretty good at that one. And I really got passionate. You don't think I got any passion, do you? I am a passionate person. It's a joke, eh? But I am. I really get excited about things. People would bring me deals. Can you imagine getting excited about a KOA campground or a trailer park or a 6-acre piece of ground that's got 12 lots on it? You know, about a tire store, about a Sears catalog store. You know, I mean, I got passionate about it. I got excited. They just make my lunch every day. I couldn't wait to go home and build the next little deal because I said, I think I can make that work. I can be the best in the Heber Valley at that. And I got a passion for it, think I'd be good at it. It's got value. Why don't I go do it? And so my point is, you don't need to be stuck, if that's the word, doing one thing in one place. Any thoughts before I just tell you some stories? Anybody got any thoughts, questions, comments? I want to tell you some personal stories of mine that just will kind of tell you how this happened to me and why. And I didn't read the book till a few years ago. So I'd retired when I read the book. Then I realized how fun it was living this and practicing some of these things and realizing the areas where I was good at it, areas that I wasn't very good at. But what a difference it made in my life, because I found myself at times really living up to all three of these. And so this book really struck home to me. Let me just share a few of them that I thought were kind of just scribbled down here a minute. My mission. Golly bee sakes, you've heard my story of my mission. I mean, I was a limping, stuttering fool practically, probably destined to fail on my mission. But my mission ended when I was sitting in the presence of a David B. Haight, working in with him every day, and it changed my life. I became so ingrained and so impassioned in that formula that it changed my whole character about after a mission life, what I'm going to do with my life. I found I was good at it, I was passionate, and it had tremendous value. And guess what, folks? I've had a chance now to spend half of my life, my retired life, working with missionaries, trying to teach how to be passionate, what the value of missionary work is, and how to be really good at it. So my mission changed my life. It was an area where I felt this. Building my Ritchie Enterprises. You know, who's ever heard of Ritchie Enterprises? None of you, except those I've told. But Ritchie Enterprises is still a small company. By any measure, it's a small company. It's got the remnants of it, still just a piece of the Ritchie group now, and my son, 2 sons and a son-in-law are running it with a couple of JD MBA friends, and they're running this 6-guy team are running it. And Ritchie Enterprises is kind of a little bank for them, and it's kind of a little beginning deal. Owned by my kids. Every one of my kids owns 10%. I own 5%. My wife owns 5%. My foundation owns 10%. So there's 8 kids, 1 foundation, and my wife and I, 10% each, spread across the board. I'm still the general partner, so I control it, but I only own 5% of it. I sit here in Hawaii, I sit in New Zealand, I sit in Africa, and I don't have to even be there because somebody's running it, even though I got the final say. They don't ask me anymore. They just do it without me. But I theoretically have the final say, you know, theoretically. But that's my company. See, I spent 11 years building it. Before I retired, I spent 11 years. 18 hours a day was nothing. 3 o'clock in the morning every day was 6 days a week was nothing. It was every day. I never once thought about taking Saturday off, ever. It was just never a thought in my mind. It was my best day of the week. You remember the story. That's one day no banks were open, so I could operate without having a bank chasing me. So it was the best day of the week for selling something. But that was fun. I was good at it. I was passionate about it. It had value. I remember our young adult, not a young adult, our young men and young women people in the ward we lived in Dangles. One year we had one young man go on to the church stake youth conference. The year we moved into the ward. We decided that wasn't right. So we, as a group of young people, advisors and bishop, etc., we decided we were going to send all of our youth to the youth conference next year. We had 62 in the ward, 62 youth, counting everybody, less active everything, 62 people. And we set out that year, and we started telling our youth that they were the biggest and the best, biggest and the best. They were from a little rural ward. They didn't even rank anywhere. Nobody even knew this Daniel ward existed. But we kept telling them, you're the biggest, you're going to be the biggest and the best next year at the youth conference. And last year, one kid went to youth conference. And so we did some stuff. We got some contracts to sell food at the rodeos and so on, so all the people and advisors and kids could work and raise the money to go. And when we got to the time to get on the bus to go to the youth conference that next year, we had on the bus for a minute all 62 of those youth. All 62. 62 out of 62. One boyfriend, this guy, I'll never forgive him, One boyfriend came to the bus as she was on the bus and talked the girl into getting off the bus and didn't go to the conference. So we ended up with 61 out of 62. The 100% we had in mind was 97.5%, whatever. One Romeo guy, and he never went on a mission. He never made it in any life. The little whelp just about ruined that girl, you know. But he just about ruined that girl, you know. She was our pride and joy, and she got off that bus. I never, oh man, terrible. Anyway, but the point is, we got to now to Kolob in Cedar City to the youth conference. We by far had the biggest crowd there. 61 out of 62 still ain't bad, and it was really fun. We were the best in the stake. We had a year of great passion. It had great value, and we were the best at it. Now, what's my point so far? Is this, you know, if you take this a boasting story, then I've ruined it for you, because I just want to point out that you can do this in everything you do. You can find a way to take anything you want to do and get good at it, become passionate about it, and make sure it's got value and pursue it. Some more, just quickly. Moore Park. We go to Moore Park, we rent a little old house that later on the fire department burned it down. Did I tell you about this? The fire department used it as a fire drill. So you can tell what kind of a little house it was. You know, after we built an institute. We started that institute with two students that sitting around the fireplace in little Moore Park, California. I mean, a nothing school, a little 2-year junior college. And before we were finished in that next year, we had 350 students going to that institute. More kids than any other institute in the church outside the Wasatch Front, in this little old house in Moore Park, California. It was the best in the world outside of Utah, the largest and the best institute in the church, in a little old farmhouse. That was really fun to be a part of that story. We had some really great kids that really worked hard on it. I told you the day we went to the temple at night, we had 747 people go to the temple on a 40-day program. Did I tell you that story? I did, didn't I? I told you that. You know, I mean, there's a little stake, one stake out of you have 47 stakes in Southern California that I know they've never reached that record since, and they never probably will ever have more than 97% go to the temple one night altogether. You know, were we passionate about it? Was it exciting? It was. You know, Virginia Roanoke, I'd tell you it was the best mission in the church. And then I'd tell you about how, you know, Franklin became a $1 billion company. From just a few 11 Mormon people that just somehow caught the vision that Hiram Smith said, we're going to go soften the beaches. He'll be here next March at our conference of champions. You want to come and see Hiram Smith come and tell his story. You know, it went from a little back room. He used to train his children. Did I tell you this? He trained his children how to answer the phone. They were just little kids. And the business was in his home. He didn't have a business. It was just a little training business in his home. Little supplies in his garage. He had girls about the same age our girls were. And they were little kids at that time, maybe 8, 9, 10, 12 at the most. And he had them answer the phone of the business, Franklin International Institute. And if they could go through the month and convince the customer that they were an adult, he gave them each one a $100 bonus. So they had to go through the month, and they'd practice on the phone. You know, a little 10-year-old girl, they'd pick up the phone and, good afternoon. This is the Franklin International Institute. Can I help you? And if she could pass that off as a powerful voice on the phone, and they all thought it was some going business downtown Los Angeles somewhere, and they got a $100 bonus. And then that company, gathering some people around him and asking them to join in, became a level 5 type leader, a person that really didn't need to credit himself, put the credit where it's due, gave everybody stock options, everybody in the company, every secretary in that place had a stock option. When Franklin went public in 1992, there wasn't a secretary that had been there from the beginning that didn't become a millionaire. There wasn't one that didn't become a millionaire with stock in that company. It became a $1 billion company, the best time management training company in the world for several years. You know, all from the garage of one man who decided he could somehow maybe do something better than anybody else, and let's go see if I can, and build a team of people around him to go get it done. I'm running out here. It's just been fun. Everything. New Zealand, we had 200 students in an institute building. When we left, we had 500 students in an institute building. We had 30. My wife had a board, a big marriage board in the institute at Waikato University, and it was a marriage board, a temple marriage board. We had these 200 students to start with, up to 500 initially. The end of that first year, we had 35 temple marriages on that board. Talk about matchmaker. There's no institute in the history of the church that's ever had 35 in one little institute, 35 temple marriages within that institute in 1 year, from scratch to marriage. Now, I think we were the best in the business at that. We were pretty dang good at it. And we were matching them up, marrying them off, and they'd put that picture on that board. That whole board is just full of these temple marriages that happened during that year. Fun time. Africa, we can talk about Africa and things that happen in Africa, happen in the MTC. There's 16 MTCs in the world. There's only one really good one, and it's in Ghana. It's the best MTC in the church. Maybe it's not anymore, maybe. I don't know. It's a joke. Okay. But the bottom, what's my point? Is there a point? Go back to this now. Finish off with this. What's the point of this whole story? Come on. Start the word off with I or we.
I am a great, passionate.
Keep going. Okay, I'm a good to great leader. I'm a level 5 leader. I am passionate about what I do. I can be the best at something. I can make something work. I got to believe in myself. And I promise you, my friends, there's no end. I mean, I really was. I was a little limping chicken farmer type guy. None of my stuff were ever big. I don't have any claim to fame of building an R.C. Willey or a Franklin story. I was a little cog in some wheels. But I was associated with the people that really did have that vision, and my little world also became something that I felt proud about. That I think Jim Collins is trying to say we can all do that. That's what we've been foreordained to do. We all have gifts and talents. We've just got to learn how to identify them, magnify them, build upon them, have faith in them and ourselves, and then begin to get good at it. Practice what you're doing until you're really good at it. Any other comments? Please.
What does the BHAG stand for?
Oh, yeah. Good. BHA, who knows what it means? You remember anybody that read it? Big, hairy, audacious goal. Big, hairy, audacious goal. You got to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's what pushes you to greatness. Our goal was 62 kids going to youth conference out of the Daniels Ward. Our goal was to build the biggest institute program in an old farmhouse in the church. Who cares? It was just a driving force behind something that we said, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And 11 companies that became the great companies all had big, hairy, audacious goals. And you can make it happen if it intersects those three passions. That make sense? Most of you, my friends, sell yourself way too short. You go home to your island, you go home to your country, you go home to your land, and you convince yourself that that could never be me. And you know what? It never will be you if you don't catch what I'm trying to say to you today and buy the fact that you could be anything you want to be if you're willing to take the time to discover your talents, find a passion for it, and identify its value. You don't need to be second-rate in anything. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Anybody mad? You okay? Let me finish with a quote, Dustin. I want to show you this quote. I want to read it to you. This is a quote by Abigail Adams. Anybody ever read the book John Adams by not David McCulloch? David McCulloch? No. What's his name? The great writer. McCulloch? I know it's McCulloch. What's his? Anyway, he's written all these great books, but John Adams is one of them. In this book is this quote by Abigail, who's the wife of John Adams and the mother of John Quincy Adams, who became then later on the President of the United States. One of the few father and son teams. This is a great quote. This is really a great quote. Who'd like to? Who's got a Moroni voice wants to read it? Please, Jesse. He does have an iron great voice. Read this to us.
These are the times in which a genius would wish to live. It is not in the still calm of life that great characters are formed. The habits of a vigorous
I think so.
Of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. Great necessities call out great virtues. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lay dormant wake into life and form the character of the hero and the statesman.
Doesn't that give you chicken skin reading that? Does it really? Can you feel the power of that? Here's a mother writing to a future president of the United States while he's in Russia. This is in 1770 something. 17 maybe, or anyway, around that, 200 years ago. I mean, communication, this had to go across the ocean on a boat in a letter to a young man living in Russia at the time. And she's telling her son, this is pre-Revolutionary War. This is the time when the John Adamses and the Thomas Jeffersons and the Thomas Paines and all these great, the George Washingtons rise up out of the ashes to save the nation, to fight an impossible war. There's no way that America could have beaten the British. No way in the history of the world. I mean, they were so outmanned and so outgunned and so outexperienced, there's no way without the Lord's help they ever could have done that. Yet this little handful of people, this little handful of impassioned people, the John Adamses and the Benjamin Franklins of life, stood up one day to themselves and said, let's band together. Together we can maybe make a difference. Let's change things. And then Abigail writes to her son and says, these are the times when geniuses would love to be born. When there's a mountain to climb and something to do, there's some great accomplishment you can do. Well, guess what, my friends? There's never been a time in the history of mankind when this world needs leaders more than they do right now. We are crumbling as a nation, as a world. We are crumbling economically. We're totally crumbling politically. We are getting so out of whack with ourselves, so in debt, so messed up. The great capitalistic nation that's been the driving force to fund the growth of the church worldwide is in the midst of chaos and going into debt by not billions but trillions every few months. Trillions. We'll never pay back. And then it's part of a worldwide story. Talking this morning in the Book of Mormon class, a little band of Jews over there were surrounded by a nuclear arsenal now. Iran's within a few weeks of having few months, who cares? And with a vow, openly said, we're going to destroy the Jews. Wipe you off the map. Guess what? That won't happen. You know why? Because the Savior's going to save his people, isn't he? Savior's going to come back. He's going to come back and save his people. The Mount of Olives are going to split in half. He's going to come down through the Mount of Olives when just before that nuclear bomb is dropped, and somehow have the Jews surrounded, and he's going to save them. They're going to say, hey, look what? We all told you the Messiah would come. He's come. Then one of them will lean down and say, but hey, what's those marks in your nails in your feet? And one of them will say, gee whiz, is that possible we did that to you? And there'll be a mass conversion of the Jews at that point. The Jews for Jesus will be a full-time job as they'll come to Christ and become a believer. And you know what will happen the same day, just the day before? With everybody in the world now, after 5,000 years of horse and buggy, 5,000 years of horse and buggy. And tomorrow you could go to China, mainland China tomorrow, And that probably every person on that spot either has or has access to an iPhone or a cell phone, to the internet. And we could overnight teach the gospel to the rest of the world. Do you think that's been revealed to this world because we want to have great phones that we can have access to? The fact we're going to do the temple work and we're going to do the missionary work for everybody on this planet, we could do it overnight. The night before the Iranians drop the bomb on the Jews and the Savior comes back. That could happen this weekend. Not probably won't, okay? Might be next weekend. But it's going to happen, and it could happen very quickly. And I'm out of time, but I just put Richie 1 and 12, okay? The gospel is true. Make it happen. These are the times when Jesus wished to be born. Your genius is in this time. Now make it happen. Good to great, okay? Thanks. Have a great weekend.